Welcome to the Fallen State. I'm Jesse Lee Peterson. Thank you so much for being with me. Immigration and transgender issues are both hot topics right now. I have with me Bamby Salcedo, the president and CEO of the Trans Latina Coalition. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
First, let me ask, are you a Christian?
I am a spiritual person, but I guess I would say no, I am not a Christian.
You're not a Christian, but you are a spiritual person.
I am a spiritual person.
And what does it mean to be a spiritual person?
For myself, right, my own definition of being spiritual,
Right.
It's having a connection with a higher power, who I chose to call God. For me, God is within me, God is with me, God is everywhere, and it is obviously a loving God.
So were you raised a spiritual person or a Catholic?
I was born and raised in Mexico, so I was raised Catholic, which is, Christian Catholic. But as I, grew to be myself and grew and see life how it is, I came to terms to myself to believe in what I chose to believe.
You are president and CEO of Trans Latina Coalition. The Trans Latina Coalition, what is that exactly?
The Trans Latina Coalition is a national advocacy organization that really focuses in addressing the specific needs and issues of trans Latinos individuals who live in the United States.
Oh, okay.
And so we believe that through service provision and advocacy, we're going to be able to not only change the landscape of our community, but also to empower our community through direct service provision.
Do you believe that men and women or human beings are in a fallen state?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I think we as humanity in some ways are in a falling state just because of the different atrocities that continue to happen within our communities, within the world. But those atrocities really are constructed, right? And so are constructed by institutional violence, institutional racism, institutional discrimination, all of those things that translate into people acting certain ways.
So what does it mean to you when I say human beings are in a fallen state?
Well, the way I interpret a fallen state would be obviously one that is sort of like, crumbling down, right? And so in some ways, we communities who are organizing and are seeing, the world that we live in currently, we are in some ways making that these social structures that have been constructed are falling.
Oh, okay.
And so
when I say fallen state, I mean that human beings have fallen away from God, and Satan is their father. Do you agree with that?
I would not necessarily use those terms in terms of following the devil, right? But I would say that definitely people are awakening to to certain beliefs that were influenced and that were basically ingrained into people, right? Which is obviously when everything started with the invasion, the European invasion, and really the colonization of people.
But if you're not following God, you are following the devil, right? You have to follow one or the other. There's no in between, no gray area. Being a Catholic, you understand that, right?
Well, I mean,
ex-Catholic, you understand that, right?
I mean, I understand that,
right.
But I don't believe in that.
And why not?
Because those are social constructions.
Well, you do believe that there is a God.
I believe there is a God.
And do you believe,
God.
And do you believe there is a devil?
I wouldn't necessarily call it devil. I know that
You wouldn't call him devil?
Well, I don't know if it's a him.
How about Satan? You believe there's a Satan?
I believe there's negative and positive power. Right. And so whether, some people chooses to call him Satan, or some people chooses to call him the devil, or whatever other terms people may use, that's fine, but that's not something that I believe in.
You say that you don't call him? You don't call Satan him?
I don't believe, even God, I don't believe it's a him either.
Do you believe it's a her?
I believe it's a power. I believe it's within the universe, and I don't believe God has a gender.
So is it a masculine power or
I think it's a combination of both.
man and woman?
It's a combination of both.
Really? So your organization work with transgender people,
Yes.
right? And you are a transgender person.
Yes.
And what is a transgender person?
Well, a transgender person, such as myself, is someone who doesn't necessarily conform to the stereotypical ways the society sees an individual, meaning sex and gender. Those are social constructs. So I do not conform to the sex that I was assigned when I was born.
And you were born a boy.
As a boy. I was born a boy.
So you had the boy body parts and everything.
Yes. I was born with what is considered to be a boy.
Right.
Yes.
And so you were born a boy. Mm-hmm. And then you
grew up as a boy.
And you grew up as a boy. Mm-hmm. How old were you before you switched over to become a woman, a girl?
I think it's important that we understand processes that people have to go through, right? If we understand child development, right, like a young child understands and lives purely, right? And so, we know at a very early age who we are, right? But it is because of societal constructs, right? Those influences that we say blue is for boys and pink is for girls, right? Those are things that are ingrained into us. And because of those,
your body parts also let you know that you're a boy too, right?
But again, it's a
that
social construct.
I don't know what you mean by that, but your body parts do let you know I'm either a boy or a girl, right?
But
without having to be told.
According to society, and again, those social constructs that I'm talking about is that those institutions or those constructions that society has said that, if you have a penis, you're a boy. And if you have a vagina, you're a girl, right? Those are things that have been created to sort of like, in some ways divide people from humanity, as you put it.
So when you were a boy, did someone have to tell you that you were a boy, or did you know that on your own?
Pretty much.
You knew on your own?
No, pretty much I was told that I was supposed to, because I was born with certain genitalia, right, that I was supposed to do certain things as a boy.
And
right?
so how long did you grow how old did you become as a boy with all the boy body parts?
Well, again,
at what age did you switch?
Well, again, I just want to sort of like give you a context, right, so that we are able to understand how we as individuals, right, like start developing and how we start forming our own way of thinking.
Right.
However, our parents, right, who are obviously the ones who are closest to us and who helps us, shape the way we think and the way we act and all of those things, they are influenced into the same beliefs. These are, again, social constructs that have been formulated.
Okay, I understand that. I understand you're saying that your parents decided whether you're going to be a boy or a girl.
Pretty much, because an innocent person,
but if you were born a boy, a male, they didn't make that decision. God made that decision because you became a boy inside your mother's womb.
Yes.
And so they had nothing to do with that, right?
But what I'm saying is
Am I right about that, though?
Yes, but what I'm saying...
I know, but just stay with me on that. I am right that you were formed in your mother's womb where your parents had no decision whether you would be a boy or a girl.
Uh-huh.
Is that right?
I mean, anatomically, yes.
Okay, and then you popped out on your birthday and you were a boy. And they're like, wow, we have a son. So they didn't make that decision. God made that decision. Am I right?
I would say yes, nature.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you were growing up as a boy. How old were you before you decided, I don't like these parts, I'm going to take them off and put on a woman's parts? What age did that come about?
what I'm trying to explain to you
Just
is...
tell me that age, though.
Well, when I started my transition,
At what age?
I was about 19 years old.
And so what made you decide at 19, I don't like this, I'm going to take off my boy body parts, and I'm going to put on a woman's body parts? What made you make that decision at 19?
Okay, so let me just say that I think there needs to be a little more education, right? Because, you know,
Right.
to be,
Yeah, I want to understand
a
that.
trans woman in my case, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you want to remove or that you want to have some certain surgical procedures in order to be who you are,
Right.
right?
No, right. You didn't, when you first realized that when you first realized you wanted to be a woman, to remove the body parts wasn't the first thought, right?
Well, again, let me just...
When did you know you felt like a girl and not a boy?
That's what I was trying to explain to you, right? Because this is when you're young, that's sort of like, you know, you're innocent and you simply want to be, right?
Right.
You sort of like know that whatever people are telling you is not matching to what you have within your body and what you're supposed to be doing.
Meaning that you had the boy look and the boy body parts, but inwardly you felt like a girl.
Correct.
Correct. And so what did a girl feeling feel like?
I am gonna, you know, in those expressions or those sort of like behaviors, right, are portrayed in a way that you're attracted to, you know, different things that you're being told to be attracted to. For instance, in most cases, you know, people like who are boys, for instance, you know, they are influenced into playing with cars, with guns, with,
Right.
you know, like what are supposed to be boy toys, right?
Yes.
But then you as an innocent child, you start sort of like be attracted to other things, right?
Like dolls and things.
Like dolls, specifically.
But did you feel like a girl?
I did.
And what does a girl feeling feel like?
I think obviously a girl, in my opinion, or the way I, you know, I remember, is obviously having a sense of authenticity, right? But at the same time, want to have that authenticity, but not being able to have it because you are being told
Right.
that that's not you.
That's right. So what I want to know though, growing up as a little boy, you were feeling on the inside like a girl. You had the feelings of a girl, right? What was those feelings? Can you tell me what that felt like? What did it feel like? What does a girl feeling feel like inside of a boy?
Well, I mean, I think, again, I think what I'm trying to explain to you is that, you know, oftentimes we get this sense of confusion, right? Because we're feeling a certain way.
What did you feel like?
Well, it's hard to describe.
You can't describe what you felt like?
I don't think so. I don't think
so
anybody
how
can
did you
tell
know
you.
you felt like a girl then if you can't describe what you felt like?
Again, I'm telling you that when you are a young, let's say 4 or 5 years old, right?
Right.
You are innocent. Your mind is not...
But as you get older though, you know, you turn 7, you turn 12, you
Right.
turn 14.
Right.
Were you feeling like a girl at 14?
You feel that you're not matching what you feel inside.
And what were you feeling inside? That's what I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to find out what make a man get to the
because
point where he...
it's hard to describe. I mean,
But how do you know you
in
felt
my
like
own personal, see, because you have to understand my background, right? So, and obviously, it don't seem like you did any kind of research to find out my story and where I come from, right?
You came from Mexico.
Uh-huh.
Were you raised by your father and mother?
No,
Just your mother?
my mother, yes.
Did you know your father?
I met my father when I was 15.
Really? What was it like growing up without your father?
Well, then again, that's where, in my own personal life, you know, you have to understand that for me, right, because of that sense of confusion and because of the sense of not having, you know, a father figure, not having those things, right, I had to resort into using drugs when I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
Right? And so for me, that was my refuge to sort of like try to make sense of who I was and also try to find the love that was lacking, right?
Because your father wasn't there, you felt the lack of love.
Many different things.
Right.
You know, that was part of it, of course.
Okay, and so as a result, you ended up using drugs and things like that because of that empty feeling.
Yes, yes.
And
now I understand that. At that time, I didn't.
Right,
But
I
yes.
understand, right. And so you identified with your mother then, you took on her identity.
I took her identity in the sense that my mother is a very strong woman. My mother is definitely a fighter. My mother is someone who has, come to the other side, right? She raised, 7 children, single mother. And so, yes, I took that from my mother, that sense of identity.
Your mother had 7 kids by the same man?
No.
Different men?
Yes.
Okay. And so are you the oldest?
I am the second oldest.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you took on your mother's identity. Did you have any anger toward your mother at all, resented her at all while growing up? Because she was so strong, did that cause you to resent her at all?
Well, for me and my own personal, story and struggle, right? I have done a lot of work on myself, and
Right.
yes, I have, I have had resentments towards my mother.
Okay.
I have had resentments towards my father, and I had resentments towards society.
That's right. Why did you resent? Why did you resent your mother? What was it about her that caused you to resent her at the time?
Well, it's many different events, right? That when you're a child growing up in a household that is very poor, you don't understand those things,
Right.
and you have certain needs that you don't understand that your mother in this case, right, like is not able to provide. So
Yeah.
that obviously creates a resentment.
Oh, okay.
So that's one way. So it's a multiplicity of different things, right? Like it's not just one single thing that you could
That's right, I
identify, right?
So do you believe that you become like what you resent? You take on the identity of the person that you resent. You become like what you resent.
For myself, I have come, again, because I've done a lot of work on myself, I have come to be who I am in the image of my own God. And so, whether there's people who tells me that I look a lot like my mother.
You look
there's
just
people,
like her.
You seen pictures of my mom?
No, but I'm looking at you and I can imagine this is what your mother looked like. So do
But
you believe
people
that,
also tell me that I look like my father.
do you believe that you become like what you resent? And so you resented your mother, she was your own identity, so you became like your mother.
Again, in certain ways,
Yeah.
probably. But I'm not going to say that I became who I resent, because I don't resent my mother anymore.
You don't anymore, but you did at the time. Could that be the reason that you started to feel like a woman as a boy because you took on the woman's spirit or the woman's identity, which was your mother?
Okay, so I think for me, what would be helpful is what is exactly that you want to get from me?
I'm trying
for
to
me to come here.
Yeah, I'm trying to
and
understand, how guys become transgender people and girls
Okay,
become.
well-
And so I'm asking these things because I
Right.
want a better understanding, and my audience does too. So.
Right. So then, I think it's important that we understand the way we ask the questions, right? Because, when you ask me if I become the person who I resent, right? I don't, and I'm not, right? Like I have become myself. I have become Bamby Salcedo, who is, I have my own autonomy, right? I am an individual. I have my own mind. And I came to be who I am, not thinking of my mother, not thinking I'm going to be just like my mother physically, right? Because I
Right.
don't know if that's what you're alluding to.
Well, no, I'm just trying to get an understanding how all this come about. That's all. So before they call you Bamby, what was your name?
That I will not disclose.
You won't tell your boy name?
I will not.
Oh, okay. And so then you met your father at 15, you say?
Yes.
15. And what was that like seeing your father?
At the time, I was at a juvenile center. And so my father was living in the United States. I was living in Mexico at the time. And he came to visit to Mexico. Through my mother, I found out my father was there, and I wanted to meet him at 15. So he came to see me at this youth authority. And so for me, that was my introduction to, my father, my biological father.
Did it feel good to see him?
I had resentments, right? And so it felt weird, right? Like, cause you don't know a person, right? And so it's like you're just meeting someone for the first time. And so, like, I think I felt good, right? But at the same time, I was angry. At the same time, I was, so it was I would say it was a mix, a compilation of feelings.
Have you seen him since then?
Yes, I just saw him, just last month. Or actually, last month.
So your father and mother know that you are a transgender person now?
Yes, they do.
And how do they feel about that?
They feel very proud that I am and I have become to be who I am.
And so at 19, you decided to remove, just to be clear, you don't have anything exteriorly that says you're a boy. Everything about you says woman, right? You took everything off.
What do you see?
Well, I don't see everything, but the things that you don't have the...
But I think that's part of the problem, right?
You don't have the penis thing, right?
Well, what I'm trying to tell you and what I'm trying to explain to you, and I hope that you get at some point, is that because of the societal messages and societal constructs, if you could be as masculine as possible, then that means that you are a macho, that you are someone who portrays to be what society thinks is a man, right? And it's the same for a woman. Society has sort of like transformed for people to think that a vagina makes a woman.
So let me ask it this way. Have you had the complete surgery? I read that you had. Is that true?
Again, I think whether I have a vagina or have a penis that is 12 inches long, like, it doesn't matter. I think what is relevant to the conversation is, what type of education you want to send to your audience.
Like Bruce Jenner did. Bruce had...
Her name is Caitlyn.
Who?
Her name is Caitlyn Jenner.
Well, he had the complete physical surgery, but apparently he's still attracted to women. Are you attracted to women at all?
My sexual orientation, again, right? I think it's important that we understand what gender identity is and what is sexual orientation, right? I personally like men, right? But sexual orientation is different than how one identifies. In other words, the gender that wants to be, that one wants to portray, right?
Let me ask, as a boy, were you, up until 19, were you ever with a girl?
Sexually, you mean?
Right.
That's something I don't want to disclose.
As a woman, have you ever been with a man sexually?
I've been with men different times, yes.
Straight men or gay men?
I personally like men.
You like masculine men?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You run something called...
But being masculine doesn't mean that a person cannot be gay. So, you know what I mean? Again, these are things that we have to understand because, it seems to me that you do have a very important role. You have an audience that follows you. And so when you send this type of messages to your audience, this is the types of messages that confuse your audience.
Well, I'm only asking the questions. You're giving the message.
Well, then I think you need to reframe your questions.
I need to reframe it? What do you mean?
Your questions are not appropriate.
What do you mean?
You're asking me if I have had, sexual reassignment surgery. That is not appropriate.
You kind of look like you have. A boy don't grow.
But that's your own assumption, though. You know what I mean? Like you're making judgments.
Do you think God created you this way, or it's because you resented your mother?
I think God has guided me through a very important process in which I am very grateful to.
Do you still have conflict within, or do you have perfect peace now?
I am going to say that I am not a fallen state. I am in a perfect state of mind.
Do you believe that transgender issue is a civil rights issue or a moral issue?
I think you know, transgender rights, it's a human rights issue.
But not a civil rights issue.
It is, I mean, if you have human rights, you do have civil rights. And if you don't, if you're not acknowledged as a human, as an individual, as a community, then obviously the other rights are like non-existent.
In a public bathroom, a confused person can walk into any bathroom of choice now. Well, not really.
A confused person, what do you mean by that?
The ones that don't know if they're a man or a woman, they can now just walk into any bathroom of choice. Is that fair to people, to heterosexual people?
I would actually, I would actually, again, rephrase my question or your question. When people are going to the bathroom, they know exactly what they're going to the bathroom for.
But is that fair to normal people that a man
What do you
or
mean
woman,
normal? What's normal? Well, maybe
heterosexual?
normal to you, maybe different to me.
So let me ask this way.
Oh
now that
God.
you're a transgender person, let's say you're walking down the road and you feel like a shower. And here's a shower at Target. You're walking past Target. Here's a shower opportunity for ladies. Would you feel comfortable going into a ladies' shower, taking your clothes off now and getting in a shower with women?
I feel very comfortable being myself anywhere I go.
I want to ask you about Donald Trump
Okay.
and Hillary Clinton. Who you voted for this time around?
As an undocumented person, I am not able to vote.
So you're here illegally?
Again, these are terms that are offensive to people.
How are you able to stay here illegally and be out in the open and people know you're that way?
I am very privileged that I am able to be and go anywhere I please.
Amazing. Donald Trump, how do you feel about his immigration plans?
I want to live in a society that it is understanding, that it is, understanding of the differences of people. Not to say that, because I'm white, I have privilege, right? And those are Donald Trump's ideals.
Did he say that?
There is
Wait
white
a minute,
supremacy.
did Donald Trump say, because I'm white, I have privilege?
But you don't have to say it. If you understand history and the way institutions are formed and the way power is formed and is portrayed.
You call Bruce Jenner a white...
Her name is Caitlyn.
Her name is what?
Caitlyn Jenner.
Okay, Bruce Caitlyn Jenner.
Her name is not Bruce.
But
Her
anyway,
name is
you call
Caitlyn.
him a white supremacist.
It's not a him. Again,
Because, let me just
you
finish
need
the
to
point.
be educated, for real. You really need to be educated.
But let me finish the
on
point because of
subject.
time. You call him a white supremacist for supporting Donald Trump. Can you explain that about
She
it?
does have white privilege.
What does that mean? What do you mean?
But then again,
What is
it
white
seems-
privilege?
Are you a journalist?
What is white privilege?
I think that's something that you should have already known.
Tell me in a few words or less, what is it? What is white privilege in your mind?
Oh my God. White privilege is really, it is about, it has to do with color and it has to do with resources that people have sort of like inherited or have access to.
What does it feel like knowing that society would never accept transgender as a norm?
Again, what you think is a norm to you may be different what I think is a norm to me. And so, that notion or that sense of norm or normal, what it is normal, it's completely, stupid.
Let me ask you a final question. Do you want to be married like to a man one day and have children and all that?
I was married for 12 years.
And you have
before.
kids? To a man or a woman?
To a man.
To a man. And you have kids?
I don't have kids.
I really appreciate you coming. Did you have fun?
I was sort of like getting upset at times.
So did you have fun?
It was interesting, I would say.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And thank you for tuning in.
Next time on The Fallen State.
Radical Islam, terrorism. How do you feel about that?
It's not a radical Islam. It's a very perverse understanding of Islam.
Why don't we see, in a public way, Muslims out protesting?
Because what you want us to take to the streets
Yes.
and say that we stand against this stuff?
Yes.